I'd like to focus in on a little area of the art of photography tonight for just a little bit, and that is your lighting ratios, the amount of light that you have in the shadow, or the controlling of the light that you have in the shadows, and the controlling of the light that you have in the highlights, and that transfer between highlight and shadow, whether it's a broad, gradual grading from the highlight into the shadow, or whether it's a stark, hard line into the highlight, into the shadow, and how much of a difference there is between the shadow value and the highlight value, and where that shadow is placed. You see, photography is not only just an art of controlling the light, but you also need to control the shadow. The shadow is just as important as the light. It is what balances off, and it's what adds mood or sets the tone of everything. And so learning to use learning to use the fill light, or a fill source, a way of controlling the shadow side of your photograph, as well as controlling the diffuse value, is just as important. I meter most of the time for the shadows. I add and subtract light into that shadow consciously, looking at it and deciding just how dense that I want that shadow for the type of a mood that I'm trying to shape in the image that I'm working on. If I'm looking for something that is dramatic and kind of shocking, then maybe it will be a deeper lighting ratio. We will have a 3-to-1. That is, the shadow side is 3 times darker than the highlight side. Or it could be a 2-to-1, or it could be a 1-to-1 in an image that's being made for an executive portrait, where you want all of the lighting specifically there together. But know what you want and know how to control that light and that shadow. And there's 2 ways that you can control the light in the shadow, for the most part. There is a passive fill and there is an active fill. An active fill means that you punch light into that shadow some kind of way, through strobe, through a continuous light source, through but some kind of a way that you are actively applying light to that shadow. The other side is a passive fill, and that is something that's reflecting light into that shadow, or the ambient light that's in the room. And you have to know what that variation is between the shadow and the highlight. So the first thing I do in my composition is decide upon what f-stop that I'm looking for when it comes to what I want from my composition. Now, I understand with the with the zone system, understanding the zone system, we talked about that before, but I want my diffuse values, this value of the light here that you're seeing, the main source of light here, I want that to be right in the center of the zone, right between 0 and 11. The reason for that is that that takes advantage of my maximum dynamic range of the image. Now, what I will do is I will decide, let's say I want 5/6. I want 5/6 compositionally for where I want my depth of field set, how I'm going to approach the image compositionally. You can pick anything that you want, depending upon, you may want to shoot wide open, you may want to shoot f/16, but you make that decision. Now, after making that decision, now I'm going to bring in my diffuse value, and it's considering I'm working in the studio. If I'm working outside on location and my key light is the sun or a street light or something outside of my control, then I do have to work within the parameters of the lighting triangle to accomplish the f-stop I'm after. I may have to raise the ISO. I may have to lower the shutter speed. I may have to raise the shutter speed, lower the ISO, in order to get my f value where I want it compositionally. But once arriving at that f-stop value, that's going to be my zone 5, center of the zone system, and that's going to be the diffuse value. For the most part, the area of the image that's being exposed by the main light source, be it either ambient or artificial. And so I'm going to take my meter and I'm going to use an incident meter, and I'm going to point that incident meter at the light source, at the place where I have the diffuse value that I want, this area over here. I'm going to point it at the light source, and I'm going to take a reading, and then I'm going to adjust until I get 5.6 at that light source. Again, like I said, I'm adjusting the ISO, I'm adjusting the shutter speed. If I'm dealing with a ambient light source that I can't affect, I can't change, I can't make brighter or darker, I'm stuck with it. The window light, sunlight, something like that. Adjust the shutter speed, adjust the ISO, come to 5.6. Or if I'm in the studio, then I can choose the lowest ISO possible that I can get to limit the amount of noise that's being induced into the system. And I can adjust the output of the strobe. That is, I can continue to increase or decrease the strobe until I get 5.6. Now I have just set my diffuse values at zone 5, which is 18% gray, exactly what the meter reads. All your meters read zone 5. On your camera meters are a little bit different, but the handheld meter all reads zone 5. The camera meter reads zone 5 also, but it's a lot trickier. There's a lot more intimate stuff. But getting back to it, now after I have that diffuse value set where I want it 5.6, and now I'm going to block that light with my hand from the incident. Now this is an antique meter, but it'll give you an idea of what we're talking about. I'm going to take the incident dome that I'm going to have. It's an antique meter, but I'm going to read my diffuse value and get it, set it at zone 5 where I want it. Now I'm going to cover that up with my hand so that none of the light is falling on the dome from the main light, and I'm going to point that dome towards the shadows, and I'm going to take another reading, and now I'm going to calculate where I am. If it's f5.6 and it's f3.5, I determine how deep I want that shadow. I may have to move my reflector closer, which increases the amount of light that the reflector puts on the subject. I may move my reflector farther away. I may tune up my fill light, dial up my fill light. I may dial down my fill light, but I control each and every aspect of that light, so that I end up with a shadow value and a highlight value, creating the mood that I want out of the image by controlling the two or the lighting ratio.